give a 5-minute presentation on a topic, I thought, why not talk about talking? That's what everybody's doing here tonight anyways, right? And maybe not talking so specifically, but communication in general. Because unless you've decided to go off to a silent retreat where they've encouraged you to check your technology at the door, or you're a hermit, you're probably communicating all the time. And from my perspective, communication is getting increasingly more complicated. We have so many different ways that our people are communicating with us: computers, tablets, telephones. We have emails coming at us, friends, coworkers, colleagues. And so since I'm still in development of creating wiser speech, I've decided not to come up with the content of this on my own, but to borrow it from the tradition of Buddhism. And while this tradition is more than 2,000 years old, I felt like there's still many aspects of wise speech that can serve us really well today. So there's 4 basic aspects of wise speech that I'd like to talk about. The first is abstaining from false speech. The second, abstaining from slanderous speech. The third, abstaining from harsh speech. And then finally, abstaining from idle chatter. So when I say abstaining from false speech, what does that mean? Well, in really simple terms, it means tell the truth. And another way to think about this is that false speech is doing something with the intent to deceive, which I thought was super interesting because that's almost the exact same definition as fake news. And that is news with the intent to deceive, right? And while none of us like fake news, it's really easy to get captivated by like outlandish headlines. So something we can do in our own lives is start to notice when we get sucked in and decide whether or not that's a rabbit hole we really want to go down. Another aspect of false speech is gross exaggerations of the truth. You might have a person in your life where you think, I was there with you when that happened, and it did not at all happen that way, right? So we might just try to avoid that or notice when it's happening. Next, abstaining from slanderous speech. So really just thinking about bringing people together rather than creating divide. And one super simple example of this that probably happens a lot is gossiping. That's often done with the intent to divide people. There's a teacher I really respect, Joseph Goldstein, and he said as a practice for 3 full months, he tried not to talk about any third person while they weren't in the room. And I thought, I'll try that for just one lunch. And during that lunch, what I noticed is that if you're talking about other people, it takes the pressure off of you, or it takes you out of your own feelings. So if we can stay with our own direct experience or the experience with other people's feelings rather than building stories about people, can help us a lot and be more skillful. Then abstaining from harsh speech. So this just means using words that are kind, gentle, and loving. So I think about this just like treating other people the way you want to be treated. So there's 3 different aspects of harsh speech. Harsh speech itself, insult, and then sarcasm. So when we think about where harsh speech comes from, it very often comes from a place of impatience. And so what we can do to counterbalance it is try to cultivate more patience in our life. With insult, that very often comes from the place to create harm. And so what we'd like to do is cultivate maybe more kindness in our life. And the last aspect, sarcasm, usually comes from other people's weaknesses or insecurities. And so instead, we might think about cultivating compassion. The last part, abstaining from idle chatter, when I was learning about this, it made me think of an episode of Friends where Phoebe is at a party. She's talking to people. They're kind of small talking with her, and she's nodding her head for a while, and then she just goes, no, I can't do this, and walks out of the room. And I was like, yes, I have felt that way so many times at parties when the conversation is just kind of meaningless and empty. And so, we could kind of think about what is the intention behind the talking that I'm doing? What does it really mean? I like to use an acronym for this. It's called WAIT. Why am I talking? Really, really helpful. You might think, is this the right person, the right place, the right time? Is this meaningful? Is it useful? Just to have more intention behind our words. And then also asking ourselves the question, what am I taking in? We're not just communicating with other people. There is communication flying at us all the time. There's communication coming in through social feeds, through news, through the fake news, right? So many different aspects. So we might ask ourselves the question, what's serving me well and what's not serving me well? And instead of having all of the notifications on our phone happen all the time, we choose the ones we actually want there. And I want to end this talk with a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and inability to listen to others, I'm committed to cultivating loving speech and compassionate listening in order to relieve suffering and promote reconciliation and peace among myself and other people. Thank you.